Hi y'all, Sam here, lead teacher of ARC 201. This video is going to introduce you to the connections between culture and the built environment. This connection is important to understand because Project 3 prompts you to design an architectural project that shapes culture. Now, culture is a big, broad term, so let's start by methodically walking through a definition. We can start by defining culture as the social behavior of a group. Social behavior is informed by the ideas that the group thinks or believes. So then we can say culture is the ideas and behavior of a group of people. Now for the connection part. Culture shapes the built environment. The buildings and infrastructure that architects and engineers design are expressions of culture or expressions of ideas and behavior. Therefore, the built environment expresses culture. In medieval Europe, for example, all the children in a family slept in the same room together, and it was a public room. The idea that every child got their own separate room with a door and a lock would have been laughable at the time because the culture didn't think that children were these people that needed space and privacy. But contrast that with America today, that's actually quite commonplace. So here we see an example of how the architecture or the built environment is shaped by cultural ideas. In this course, we've been working on becoming aware of how your ideas shape the things you design. This is essential training for you to become a designer of our built environment. By becoming an architect, you actively participate in making our built environment and thus shaping culture and writing history. So culture shapes the built environment. Our usage of the built environment then shapes culture, creating this feedback loop. You could say that the two are in dialogue. They're talking to each other. They also listen to each other and respond to each other. Another way to say this is that the way things are built, the way they operate, reinforces how we behave around them, and thus how we think about the elements that compose our built environment and our culture. A good example to illustrate this would be how the people of Seattle have used their shorelines and waterways over the last 150 years or so. In the second half of the 19th century, the shorelines were used largely for industry. Factories and ports dotted the shorelines, supporting a massive timber industry. The residents of Seattle, mostly people of European descent, didn't value the shoreline as a natural beauty to appreciate. Actually, most Europeans in America brought over this idea of nature being this rugged, chaotic challenge to conquer and to harvest the resources from it for profit. Forests were logged, mills were set up on the shorelines, and the waterways were used as channels to transport and store the logs. So over time, this industrial use polluted the shorelines and the waterways, making them these ugly, smelly, toxic places. This ugly, toxic environment that people built along the shorelines then reinforced this cultural idea that nature is this inhospitable place. And so it created this feedback loop that fed upon itself until enough people started experiencing the ill effects of this. People were getting sick. People were dying. And the residents of Seattle started to recognize that they actually wanted to clean up and make their cities beautiful places to be. So we start seeing this shift in the culture built environment feedback loop towards more what we see today in Seattle, where nature is this thing to appreciate. It's this asset that we want to preserve because we understand the value of it in a different way other than just profit. That's a very simplified version of that story. There are lots of fraught issues and nuance embedded in that history, but we don't have to get into that here. Let's instead move on to another example that illustrates how culture and the built environment interact. I'm going to walk through a typical plumbing system, like the one that might be in your house, and illustrate how the way the system is designed influences how we interact with the system, and thus our culture around the system. A typical plumbing system is a network of invisible pipes buried underground and in your walls that supply clean water and let it drain away. It's convenient, it's easy, that's why indoor plumbing is commonplace throughout much of the world. Why would you want to change something that works so well? Well, because the indoor plumbing system might be influencing us to think and behave in ways that don't reflect our values as a culture. Let me explain this a little bit more. Every sink has a faucet. You can easily turn on the faucet and allow water to flow directly into the basin. The drain is usually directly below the faucet. So without any effort, without knowing where the water's coming from or where it's going, you can turn on the faucet and leave it on for hours and let the water just drain away. But where is away? Where does the water go? And does it affect anyone or anything downstream of me after I use it? And how does it stay clean before I use it? How much water did I even use today? I took a shower, I did a load of laundry, I used the toilet a few times, and I ran the dishwasher. How many gallons is that? I don't need to think about those questions to have clean drinking water whenever I want. Water just keeps coming whenever I turn on the faucet. So you can see that the way the system is designed influences my culture around the system. Most of it is completely invisible. There's nothing to see, so there's nothing to think about, and there's nothing to ask questions about. It's set up in a way to make it easy for me to waste resources and know nothing about the system. But we know that water is a limited and valuable resource. And because of the way the system is designed, we still waste it. So if we don't think that the culture around the system reflects what we know and reflects our values, how do we change it? Well, we as architects make the built environment. So we can place ourselves into this feedback loop between culture and the built environment and change the way people think and behave based on our imagination of a better world. So, what is the world that you want to imagine? For Project 3, your job is to reframe how we can interact with water and shape a new culture that celebrates this precious resource. What exactly about water do you want to bring into focus? What are your goals? And why are they your goals? These are the questions you can ask yourself at the beginning, the middle, and at the end of this project.